You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. This is Tracy Murda with the Future Tech Podcast. This morning, I am very excited to welcome special guest Syed Hussain, CEO of Liquidity Digital. Liquidity Digital is a startup with the vision to go ahead and develop the most scalable and interoperable blockchain infrastructure to solve pressing issues in capital formation. Welcome, Syed. Thank you so much for joining me so early. I guess it's not so early for you. You're about an hour ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I think it's more early for you than it is for me. And
you're
listen, I'm a Wall Street guy, so our day starts a lot earlier than for the rest of the world. It also ends a lot earlier than for the rest of the world as well.
Your day never ends.
Not a lot. No, I'm sorry. I said a lot earlier. It starts a lot earlier than the rest of the world, and it ends way later than most of the world.
I was just going to say, you're kind of working around the clock. Well, why don't you jump in and tell us a little bit about, I want to know a lot about Liquidity Digital and what you guys are aiming to do.
Absolutely. So Liquidity, it's, when you gave the intro, it was it was quite a mouthful, right? Where what we're looking to accomplish. Essentially, let me try to explain it for the layman, right? The way that I say it is, traditional forms of capital formation are simply not keeping pace with what the demands are for capital formation, given the increasingly accelerated pace of growth that the world is experiencing, right? So the Internet 1.0 came and it took us to a completely different level. Internet 2.0 came to the point where we are now, and this is where blockchain comes in and brings in the realm of Internet 3.0. And within that, what we're doing is through blockchain, right? So you've got this protocol in which trust and incentivization is inherent within it. And through this, what that allows you to do is disintermediate. Well, if you can disintermediate, then all of a sudden what you're doing is you're bringing in efficiency into a particular process, which then leads to efficiency being within a company, to efficiency being within an industry, and all of a sudden you're changing the way that everything functions. So with Liquidity, what we're doing is we're looking to apply blockchain technology in a regulated, compliant manner, and that's crucial, is the regulated and compliant manner, and bring that to the capital markets. So taking the same notions of how traditional capital formation works, and by automating it and putting it onto the blockchain through what we call digital security issuances. And these digital securities are going to essentially be programmable smart contracts in which in which where things have already been agreed upon in terms of how they're going to be executed, and what that will lead to is it leads to qualified issuances being put in front of qualified investors, and essentially globalizing and democratizing the capital markets, specifically markets which traditionally have been illiquid. So what Liquidity is doing, Liquidity Digital, what we're doing is we're building an end-to-end ecosystem which will allow for this entire process to take place.
So, Syed, what was it that inspired you, or what was it that kind of, give me a little bit more on your background in particular as to how you even, recognized the need?
Oh boy. You know, all right, I mean, yeah, absolutely. I'll give you my
Filled up my
background.
coffee cup, so go for it. We could sit here all day.
um, I'll give you my background, but I'll preface it by saying this as well, right? As far whenever I hear, what inspired me and whatnot, I would love to sit back here and say that, yeah, man, I'm such a sharp guy. This is what I figured out, and here's where it was, and this is how he came up with it. The reality is this, right? The reality is that what ultimately what led to all this is I've just been blessed to have been surrounded by people that are way, way, way smarter than I am. And I just listen to them. I listen to what it is that they're saying and where they think it's going, and I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Let's do it. So that's really been my secret sauce, is to surround myself with people that are a lot sharper, a lot smarter than I am, and that's essentially been the reason behind the success of Liquidity and what it is that we're doing. My background is I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I launched my first company when I was a senior in high school, which was right around the time that the dot-com boom was taking off. And again, I didn't know much about the industry at the time, but I knew people that did, so I partnered up with them. And by the time I graduated high school, I had an opportunity to jump into the Fortune 500 world. So I was with GE Corporate, and from there I started getting exposure towards the various business units of GE, and they dabbled in everything. But the one that intrigued me the most was GE Capital. From there, I started to get more and more exposure towards the capital markets, and then I decided to jump headfirst into it. So went to go work for Wall Street. I was at Credit Suisse, and then spent a couple of years there, and just learned. It was a great way for me to understand both the marriage of emerging technology with emerging finance, and understanding the whole notion around how the world of finance works, from that to financial engineering and creativity within that industry, and how technology leads to innovation across the board. So my last corporate gig, I used to be the head of data analytics for Neuberger Berman, which used to be the asset management division of Lehman Brothers. I went in post Lehman collapse, when the powers that be at Neuberger decided they didn't want to be a part of the new Barclays entity, and I went in during the split, and essentially built that laid the groundwork for their the business intelligence, and then what evolved into the data and analytics division. Built that out from the ground up, and then a couple of years into that, the entrepreneurial bug started nipping at me again. So I decided to leave that world, and started a company focusing on artificial intelligence, data visualization, natural language processing, and ended up getting picked up by a larger firm that was looking to expand into the Northeast. So was there for a while, and then ended up getting poached by a larger firm which was focusing on digital transformation. And in between those two firms, that's when I came across this thing called Bitcoin, and initially came into Bitcoin as a cynic. I'm like, well, what is this thing? I'm someone who understands technology. And I'm someone who understands technology, and I'm someone who understands capital markets. I'm gonna be that guy who's gonna expose this thing for the fraud that it is. So rolled up my sleeves, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of opinions being thrown around, but let me formulate my own. So I went directly to the source. I went to Satoshi's white paper, and I started reading it. And what was supposed to be a 15-minute read turned out to be a 2.5-hour analysis, where I'm just like, oh my God. Every sentence, I'm like, holy crap. This thing is so much more than what people are calling it. And most people have no idea about the implications of this thing and where it's going to be. So that was it for me. That was the aha moment where I didn't know, but not an aha moment for a solution, but just an aha moment in realizing that we're on the brink of something far greater than what most people even think of this. And immediately I was like, the impact that the internet had on the way that we interact with each other is going to be the impact that this blockchain technology is going to have on the way that we transact with each other. And immediately I was like, this is it. This is my calling. This is what I need to get into. So I started to immerse myself in just learning more and more and more about it. And the one area where I saw an immediate need for was what I called the tokenization of assets, real world assets, and the ability to be able to digitize and securitize them onto the blockchain. And was going to go off and launch a firm focusing on that when I came across I needed someone on the back end to be able to execute on the technology, and that's where I came across BankX and met with the founder and the CEO of BankX. They had a really interesting project that they were developing around what they called the proof of asset protocol, and it was something that was executed right. It was something that I was like, yeah, this is it. Our visions align. So when I spoke with him, he said, look, why don't you? We're well funded. Come on board and join us as one of our key executives. So I joined the organization as their global chief commercial officer, and then eventually I climbed up the ranks, and I ended up becoming the CEO of the Americas, and was building that out, and just found, again, was extremely fortunate to just have a rock star team on the Americas side that we were building this thing out. But then when I started to see that, while it's most people tend to put a focus on the vision and the ideas, but what I always say, and again, this is coming from a serial entrepreneur, but ideas are a dime a dozen, right? I don't put much value in ideas. To me, it's always about the ability to execute. And if you lack that ability to execute, and if your path of execution is not right, then nothing is going to come about. And our for what we were doing here in the Americas, that started to deviate from what the rest of the organization was doing. Our path to execution was a bit different. I wanted to focus more on the institutional aspect and the blockchain aspect of it, rather than the crypto and the retail aspect of things. So that's where the deviation occurred. And I said, listen, it doesn't make sense for us to continue battling back and forth around this. So I resigned in January. I told the team, and immediately the team followed suit as well. And that was essentially the genesis of Liquidity. So, myself, along with our two co-founders, Marina Shostak and Chitin Jain, our CTO, and really the brains behind all of this, right? We came together, and that's where Liquidity came into existence. So fast forward into April, and here we are, and we're well on our way to developing our building out our platform. We've got more issuances on our way, just quality issuances that we're looking to do our due diligence on, continue to build this thing out, and we're looking to educate the rest of the world in terms of the impact of this technology and what it means. So here we are now.
I love that this started with you tried to debunk Bitcoin. That's great.
I think that's I was just talking about this on a previous podcast that I was on, and I mentioned to them, that kind of a mindset is what's needed in our industries. I think one of the things, and without getting too political and turning this thing into a political conversation, but I think one of the things that's lacking in the world today is our ability to be able to have healthy conversations from opposing perspectives. I think that if we have more and more of those, that's where the real value is going to come out of. So more than I actually enjoy conversations with people that have opposing perspectives from me than people that share in on the same perspectives. Because with the people that share in on the same perspectives, it's just an echo chamber. I'm not learning anything. But
right.
With those that oppose, I'm constantly growing and getting better and better as a result of it. And I think if we were to apply that same concept into the world of blockchain, I think you're going to start to see this thing grow by orders of magnitude.
Look what happens when you challenge it, And like you said, opposing views often opens up a lot more windows. I mean, the news today should keep you busy then. There's all sorts of shit going on.
Well, the problem is if I start to look at the news, then I won't be able to do anything else.
Don't. I know. I haven't even turned CNN on
yet. There's too much.
Well, let's get back to talking a little bit more specifically about Liquidity Digital and the process. I like to look at, give me like a real use case from kind of start to finish as to how it would work throughout your process.
Sure. Okay, I'll give you a real use case without getting into specifics in terms of history or
layman's case. Layman's case, please.
Layman's case. Let's do it that way. So in today, right? The one issue that across the board that people need is if you're an entrepreneur, if you're looking to raise capital, there's you're very limited in your ability to raise capital, right? Look, it takes money to make money, and right now, the question is, well, if it takes money to make money, how am I going to get that money that's going to take in order for me to make? And that's where the capital formation process comes in, right? There's an entire industry that deals with capital formation, and we call that capital markets. And the problem is that there's a massive cost that's associated with traditional forms of capital raises, right? And the reason behind that is because yes, we have a very very mature industry. It's been around for it's been around for not decades but centuries. And it's been an evolving process. However, with where technology is today and with the sort of market demands that are needed, we need to get more and more creative. We need to get more innovative about this whole capital formation process. And the reality is that the capital markets and the way that they're structured right now, and I should know, I come from them, it's incredibly inefficient. Inefficient in the sense that with they don't have the ability to be able to capitalize on the existing technology because all of the technology that's being leveraged is built off of legacy systems. Well, in comes in this technology called blockchain, which now gives you the ability to completely disintermediate, and where it doesn't necessarily have a dependency on the old legacy systems. Now, all of a sudden, the world starts to wake up and says, "Oh, okay, if we can actually incorporate this in and do it in a way which is regulatory compliant and automate the process, and all of a sudden it's the overall evolution of the space is right in front of us, and it's going to happen very very quickly, right? It's going to be occur at a very rapid pace. So with liquidity, what we're doing is we are enabling that process of disintermediation, and we're doing so through the build out of our platform. So if you're someone who is, you have to meet certain qualifications, right? From our perspective. So long as you have the number one requirement is that you need to be a quality issuance. In other words, you need to have a solid business model behind what it is that you're seeking to raise the capital for. This is not the wild west of the ICO days where anyone had any silly idea and we're going to do that, because it's all of our reputations that are on the line. And again, at the same time, what we're also looking to do is we're looking to create a healthy market, and a healthy market gets created through quality, not necessarily quantity. So while the focus in the past within the industry has been on quantity, now that shift is starting to occur where now the focus is on quality. So the number one criteria for us is whether it's an actual quality issuance that we're putting on. Generally, it's going to be something that is asset backed, has some sort of an asset that's backing it. And then what we do is then we take a look at the amount of the raise. So if it's something that in order for you to come on board at a minimum, unless we see some imminent strategic value in it, it needs to be at a minimum a $10 million raise. So that would, so once you know that it comes in, then what we're doing is we're digitizing that entire process. We're going to structure the deal where we work with we're working with folks from the traditional markets, and we're bringing this technology to them that will allow them to automate the whole process of when you're doing a capital raise, all of the components that go into it, right? So things like due diligence, KYC, AML, AIV, right? For those that don't actually understand the terminology, I can go into details around that. So KYC, know your customer, AML, and anti-money laundering, AIV, accredited investor checks, right? All those regulatory components that are needed before one can actually do an issuance or invest in something, they're all automated. That gets put together. Then there's the actual structuring of the deal and the issuance of the security, whether it's going to be a digital security in the format of equity or in the form of a debt instrument. We're going to put that out. Then it's the creation of a smart contract that's going to govern how the transaction will actually occur, both pre and post issuance. taking custody of the assets, and then there's the distribution channels. Once security has been issued, which exchange is it going to get listed on, so that you can actually get liquidity for those that want liquidity, putting those out, distributing it out, and then the entire process, the entire life cycle of the security itself, right? Things like tax compliance, things like dividend distributions, investor management, voting rights management, onboarding, transfers. The entire life cycle of it will continue to be managed in an automated way through the Liquidity digital platform, and in turn, we're connecting them with investors who have an interest in investing within that particular asset class. And by automating this entire process, what we're doing is we're bringing quality issuers and we're marrying them with quality investors on a global scale, which is in a highly economical way as compared to how the traditional markets work today.
So, how would you say, or who would you say is like your ideal partner?
Partner in terms of client, or partner in terms of our distribution channels?
Not both.
So, look, I mean, I think I spoke about it earlier in terms of client. Who our ideal client would be is someone who actually has a business model. Look, the way that I explain this thing to people is, anytime someone hears the word blockchain, we're living in a world of hype when it comes to any sort of technology, not just blockchain, right? This happened during the Internet 1.0 days. This happened during the Internet 2.0 days, and it's it's happening now with the Internet 3.0 as well. What we need to do is we need to get away from the hype. Unfortunately, the problem is that you have two sides. You've got one side which, the moment they hear anything associated with blockchain, they're like, yeah, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And then you have other guys on the other side of the spectrum who are like, oh, blockchain, nope, scam, fraud, don't want to deal with it, don't know, don't care, right? When the reality is that you have to take it for what it is. Blockchain is nothing else but a tool that enables you to do things in an efficient manner. What's crucial, so the way that I explain this to people is that, digital securities, issuing a digital security for your platform, that's the icing on the cake, right? When people are looking to buy, what's critical to understand is that what people are looking to buy is not the icing, which unfortunately is how most people sell these. Is anything with blockchain on it, they're selling the icing. People don't care about the icing. People care about the cake. And the cake is the actual investment that they're putting into, which means that the fundamentals of investments don't change, right? Is it something that, what's your risk management strategy? How are you mitigating it? What are your governance controls in place? What does the management team comprise of? What's the return on the investment that I can look at, right? All the same things that people are going to ask for a traditional investment remain true. So you need to have a quality investment that you're looking to bring in front of an investor, right? So that's the number one thing that we look for. Then once you have that, then everything that digital securities brings is just the icing on top of that, which is going to make your investment even that that much more lucrative for the investor, and they would take this before anything else because it's automated, it's transparent, it's efficient, right? And it brings in the one thing that every investor wants, which is liquidity across the board. So that's what we look for. What we're looking for is a quality investment, right? Anything that would, because before we can put it onto our platform, we have to be sold on it. So if it's something that gets us excited, then yes, that's something that we're, that we would put onto our platform. So that's on the client side. On our distribution side, really what we're looking at is it's people incorrectly think that we're going to be, people incorrectly assume that we're going to be in competition with the investment banks and with the distribution channels because through our technology we're going to replace them. Look, this stuff is not going anywhere, right? Banking is not going anywhere. How banking is done is what's going to get changed, right? Before banking was primarily done on paper. Now it's barely done on paper, right? So similar to that, the whole capital raising process, right? It's going to go digital. It's going to get automated, and you need to have some sort of a technology platform or some technology built out that's going to enable you to be able to do so. So rather than the assumption that people have, which is that there's this competition, they're embracing us because they're seeing our technology platform as being the one that's going to power the future of their business model moving forward. So for our distribution channels, what we're looking at is we're targeting and we're looking at a lot of the traditional players, those that are looking for quality issuers, as well as those that have access to quality investors, and they're leveraging our platform to automate that process.
So what's on tap for Liquidity Digital in the rest of 2019 and going forward?
Oh boy, a lot of sleepless nights. It's for us. Look, we're an incredibly fast growing startup, and we've really been just surpassing our own expectations. And believe me, we've got very high expectations from ourselves, and that's a credit to the team that we have. And so I'll sort of give you a little bit of a teaser, but there should be an upcoming announcement over the course of the next few weeks about the fact that we got our seed funding in as well, which means now if we thought that we had pressure before we had our funding, now we've got funding. Now that we have funding, the pressure has gone up even more. So that means now we have to perform even more than where we thought we had to. So there's going to be three fronts that we're going to be operating on. The first one is on the continued build out of our technology platform. The second one is going to be in terms of continuing to bring on quality issuances, bringing on the right clients. And then the third one is going to be continuing to build out our distribution channel and our partnerships. And it's just go from that point forward. So look out for a variety of announcements across all three of these.
And Syed, what's the best way for people to get information or to reach out to you if they are interested in becoming involved?
Well, I was going to say that the traditional way, which is feel free to email me at Syed at liquidity.digital. So Syed, SYED at liquidity.digital. But the reality is, this goes to show you the insanity of how quickly technology evolved. Where we've gone from snail mail to email, and now I barely even check my email. Now, if you want to connect with me, just the best way to do so is going to be through social media. So reach out to me on Twitter. Follow me. It's at SerialTechX. So SerielTechX, the letter X. So follow me on Twitter, SerialTechX, and I'm pretty accessible. Any questions you guys have, let us know. And like I said, if you guys have a quality issuance that you want to explore the digital securities world, or if you're interested in being a part of us, being a part of this world and being a part of Liquidity Digital, hit me up. I'm accessible. I'm here.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much again for our audience. This was an awesome sit down with Syed Hussain, the CEO of Liquidity Digital. Thank you so much, and I wish you the best of the rest of your day. I'm sure it's a busy one.
Thank you so much. It's gonna be a long one, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Have a great long weekend. Bye-bye.
You as well. Thanks. Bye.
You're listening to the Future Tech Podcast with Richard Jacobs. Future technologies such as artificial intelligence, stem cells, 3D printing, gene editing, Bitcoin, blockchain, the microbiome, quantum computing, virtual reality, and exploring space are much closer than you might think. In fact, many early versions of these technologies are in play right now, and the companies that are using these technologies are the focus of this podcast. My goal for you, the listener, is to learn from these podcasts. You may very well learn something that may change the course of your life for the better, steer you towards a new career, or give you insight into addressing a thorny medical problem. Remember, this podcast and its content is informational in nature only. No medical, tax, legal, financial, or psychological advice is being given. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please listen, subscribe, like, and tell your friends about it. Thank you.